Thanks everyone for joining us. We are going to preview our Executive Function Challenge today. So let's go ahead and get started. I am Jess Corinne, Head of Educational Services for Learnfully. I started my career in education as a classroom teacher. I was fresh out of college, super excited and eager to dive into the classroom, as most of you can relate. I soon realized that I didn't feel equipped to serve each and every learner in my classroom community the way that they needed and deserved. And so I joined forces with Linda Mood Bell Learning Processes, where I really refined the art of multisensory evidence-based implementation. I stayed with them for about 12 years, moved into a consultant role, a center director role, a regional manager role, and then I started my private practice in the Bay Area where I was born and raised, and was able to consult with a pediatrician's practice, several local schools, all the while serving learners one-on-one with differentiated instruction. So that brought me to Learnfully. I'm so excited to be here. Without further ado, I'd love to introduce Dr. Sheila Murphy, who will do her introduction. Go for it.
Thanks, Jess. So my name is Dr. Sheila Murphy. I actually got into education a little bit later in life. My purpose for getting into education was to support learners with differentiated learning, because my own 3 sons struggled in school and were eventually diagnosed with learning disabilities. And I just thought there has to be a better way to support kids through the system. So when I did get into education, it was for the purpose of supporting families and learners and educators to better be able to support students. And so I did this as a classroom teacher. I also was a district instructional coach that oversaw 26 elementary schools with at-risk early reading intervention program, and then as an administrator, a school principal. And then ultimately, like Jess, went into consulting and carried on our passion of supporting different learners until I found my way to Learnfully also as an educational specialist.
Yay, we're so happy to have you. Thanks for joining us today. So this is our agenda. We're going to start with a Learnfully introduction. We'll give you an overview into our platform and our mission, as well as our service and offerings. We'll give you an overview into executive functioning as a whole to set the stage for the preview of our Executive Function Challenge simulation, the main event. And then we'll have time for discussion and reflection. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat below. And if we're able to answer those live, we certainly will. If not, we will definitely circle back with you to make sure you have the answers that you need. All right, so Learnfully is a personalized platform of a highly curated network of educational specialists. We provide multisensory evidence-based instruction in areas such as literacy, math, executive functioning, and social emotional learning. We also pride ourselves on proactive communication. We feel that strongly that the ecosystem around the learner really can help move that learner towards their end goal, towards their path to potential. And so we're constantly in communication with both caregivers and educators alike to ensure that everyone knows exactly what our goals are, as well as the progress thereof. We're continuing to build a content platform as well to really reinforce the progress of our learners and our community as a whole in between instructional sessions. So that way we can ensure that we're making the most out of each and every moment with our learners. So let's get started. I'm going to ask Sheila a couple questions, and then we'll talk about the simulation itself. So Sheila, can you help us out just by providing a big picture overview into executive functioning?
Yeah, absolutely. I really love doing this actually with kind of an example of how our lives go each and every day. So I'm going to give an example, and then we'll kind of talk about what they are. So let's pretend in the morning that you need to get ready for work. You need to plan out what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat, what you need to bring with you. You'll need to make sure that you don't get caught up on Facebook, any kind of social media that will distract you, when you should be getting ready by prioritizing your time and your tasks. You also need to manage your time by allowing yourself enough time to get showered, get dressed, pack your lunch, drive to work. All of those things that take lots of time. You need to be organized and organize your things for the day, especially since you'll be headed out on this particular day to dinner straight from work for your coworker's 40th birthday. So you won't have time to come home at all if you forgot something like your coworker's birthday present. In order for you to remember this change in your schedule, in the first place, your working memory better be on point. On your way to work, there's an accident on your typical route, so you need to reroute yourself to get to work on time, in which you need to engage your flexibility. Maybe somebody cuts you off in the car in the meantime, so you need to use your impulse control, which sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge, right? Once you get to work, you need to begin planning your workday, prioritizing your tasks, making sure to utilize those time management skills to adhere to the deadlines that you have for the day. While at work, you realize that what you've been working on isn't exactly turning out the way that you thought it should. So you need to use your self-monitoring skills to determine if you need to pivot or if you need to make any changes or keep plugging ahead. So you also need to make sure you initiate the tasks that need to get your day started in order to plan ahead of the big projects and breaking those down into smaller tasks. And later at a team meeting, you need to work on your memory. Your working memory needs to be up and running so you can remember the important points of your meeting and begin employing those in your work that afternoon. And just wait till that after work celebration. There'll be lots of opportunities to employ some impulse control there too. So as you can tell, throughout our entire day, we are using all kinds of executive functions to get through our big tasks, our little tasks, and everything in between. So things like organization, working memory, inhibitory control, cognitive flexibility. These are all things that are so very important to help us manage tasks, help us remember what we need to do, multitask even, right? So the working memory specifically is responsible for processing information. If it's well developed, it allows us to manage multiple chunks of information at the same time. Complex tasks can be solved and deep ideas understood. Without much working memory, our intelligence is actually fairly limited. Inhibitory control describes our capability to concentrate, regulates our emotions, and controls our behavior during stressful situations. It's an essential skill if we want to change a childhood habit, any bad habits that we may have. And without it, we might have trouble controlling our behavior, and we can come across as kind of strange or odd. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to adapt to a new task quickly and change our perspective. If we have a little of it, we can adapt and we get stuck in our old ways and our thoughts. And we have tunnel vision. We come across as stubborn and uncooperative sometimes.
Thank you for that overview. And I love the scenarios that you presented, because I think we can all directly relate to that throughout any typical day. So I appreciate you providing those examples. So let's dive into kind of the inner workings of these three layers. So I like to look at executive functioning. The common example is it's like the CEO of your brain, right? I like to look at it as the conductor of your brain, because a lot of the responsibilities in the role of the conductor is following suit to these 8 underlying skills within executive functioning. So we have areas, as you mentioned, like working memory, impulse control, cognitive flexibility, but we also have areas like self-monitoring and editing, making sure that your materials and your mind are both organized, being able to manage your time and initiate tasks when required to do so in a timely manner. So I think it's extremely important, and sometimes it goes unnoticed, because executive functioning is really how to operate in everyday life. And so a lot of our learners will face struggle in executive functioning, and it won't be detected until they're older and they're required to, let's say, juggle multiple classes at one time. So that is just my broad overview into these 8 component skills and really the complexity that lies within.
Absolutely.
I love if you can share an example. I know that you've been able to relate to this in your personal life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I had mentioned earlier, my own 3 sons struggled with learning challenges. And there were a lot of frustrations because the educators would want to label things. You know, go have them checked for ADD, go have them checked for this, go have this looked at, their processing, all these things. And nothing really set well with me, because it didn't make sense when I was trying to educate myself for my
Mhm.
own learners. And so they would be tested. We would go through different assessments with them, but I never really understood for my own children. Okay, so if they're diagnosed with something, then what? And it
Mhm.
wasn't until I understood the executive functioning skills and how they can specifically be taught. So we can label kiddos with whatever we want, but the reality of it is how are we specifically testing, and or how are we building on these skills,
Mhm.
and how are we ensuring that they're being successful? So things like paying attention. My son was in 2nd grade, and the teacher would tell me he was not disruptive, he wouldn't do anything, but his attention was not on what she was doing. He would be building little figurines out of
Mm.
paper clips and erasers. So we'd say, okay, he doesn't have ADHD, he could sit still all day long and make a little figurine out of an eraser and a paper clip.
Mm.
um, so it was really about what, looking at some of these executive functioning strategies and say, okay, so is he, what was creating this gap between his learning? Because he was struggling, but the things he was struggling with was some of the other ones: staying on task, organizing and planning. He didn't have these skills, but he wasn't even being taught the skills. And so he
Mhm.
didn't have the working memory. We knew that because of some assessments that we did. And definitely didn't have the organization because he didn't have the attention to stay focused on what
Right.
he needed to be doing. So it's very tricky when you when you think about um, what these skills are and how to build on them to ensure success for your kiddos.
Absolutely.
Um,
And I just find executive functioning is kind of like the preface to other learning challenges. And that, for the most part, and that's not a universal truth, but it is housed in the prefrontal cortex. And so it limits your brain's ability to access different areas of the brain. We've also noticed a huge uptick in anxiety. And I like to call that the
Mhm.
stress fog that takes place in the front of your brain because it actually prevents those pathways from accessing other areas that are responsible for literacy, math, and so forth, so that you aren't able to access your potential. So our goal is to teach that it's teachable, as you said, to teach strategies in order to streamline the areas in the
Mhm.
brain so they can tap into their potential that they might not even
Mhm.
realize exists.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think one other really interesting fun fact. So once I really started diving into my own children's learning challenges, I discovered within myself, because when I went to school, they didn't do testing for
Mm-hmm.
dyslexia and those kinds of things. Once all 3 of my boys were diagnosed with dyslexia, I was like, I wonder. So I did take the assessment, figured out I was as well. But the thing that's I think really important to understand as the adults in the room is that it's very difficult for us as adults to support sometimes our own children if we don't have the awareness around where we
Mm-hmm.
have challenges with our own executive functioning. Because I know, I can walk in to do the dishes, and 3 hours later, I've done the laundry, I've worked on a computer, I've fed the dogs, I've done 16 other things, the dishes aren't done. So I know this now about myself, right? And so I have to come up with tools to ensure that I stay on task. it's nothing that does not come naturally for me. So it's really important for us to understand our own as we're trying to support our learning too.
Brilliant point. That is so key. The introspective aspect of all of this is so important, because then we can also dig deep and recognize if we can't be the one to support our learners directly and get help externally, but B, learn how we learned best and have that heightened cognizance so that we can use that as a strategy base for our own learners at home and in the classroom communities. So that was great. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. What is the executive functioning challenge? Let's talk about this simulation. This is the topic, as you probably know, that is near and dear to my heart. I spent a long time as an educator unaware of executive functioning. And once I realized how much it impacts your day-to-day and your overall potential, it was this aha moment. And so I just felt like I needed to create a simulation so that others can experience what learners face each and every moment of each and every day. So we Learnfully created the simulation that really goes through 3 phases. It can be conducted in anywhere from 90 to about 2 hours in terms of length and duration. We provide you with an introduction overview into executive functioning, again, to really set the climate in terms of what are these areas that we're looking to experience and measure support. And then we dive into a circuitry. So there are 6 different stations. Each station represents a different layer of executive functioning. And so you have this opportunity to really dive deep into each of the 6 layers and make sure that you have the chance to feel what a learner feels like as they are personally experiencing each of these executive functioning skills. And then you change stations, right? It's a circuitry. And at the very end, there's a discussion and debrief. And I think that's really, I mean, you get such a huge, phenomenal experience through the stations. It's just monumental. And then you get a chance to fully reflect and discuss what you were feeling, what you experienced, and also the now what, right? Those strategies that you mentioned, Sheila, are so important to ensure that we give you some quick grabs, some immediate takeaways, so you feel like you can leave the simulation not only with a heightened cognizance and awareness around your learners' experiences and skill sets, but also what you can do to support them and help bolster and strengthen some of these skills so that they can apply them in and out of the classroom. So we thought it would be really fun to preview 2 of these stations, and I hope you all are game, because we certainly are. So let's do a deeper dive into 2 of them. It won't be exactly like the simulation because there's other variables to consider in the simulation, like you're changing stations, there's a little bit of tension, there's a little bit of stress around it. So we can't directly simulate those variables, but we'll do our best in showing you a preview of 2 of the circuits now. All right, so let's start with you, Sheila. Let's go ahead and talk through what station 1, the goal, the activity, and then we'll do a quick activity together.
Yeah. So the goal for simulation 1 is to simulate the weakness in working memory. So I'm going to show you a strip. So you see the card that's in the center of the slide now. When we use these in the simulation, we cut them into strips, and you'll be shown the 1 strip, or whoever's doing the simulation, for about 5 seconds. And then you're going to be asked to maybe recall the order, the type, the quantity of the symbols that you saw. And then you're going to be asked to write them down in sequence. So we're going to give this a try.
Great. So we're going to hold up the slide with the symbols on it. We'll hold it up for about 10 seconds, and then I'll take it away from sight, and you'll have a chance to write them down from memory. That's the important part, right? Okay, got it. I'm ready.
All right. So
hopefully
you have a pencil, participants have a pencil and a paper nearby. You'll need that for this activity. So if you could grab one if you don't have one now, and then Jess will be holding it up.
Okay, let's do it. Ready, set. Okay, I'm going to go back 2, just so you can't see it. Now go ahead and write down those 10 symbols, or the few symbols that you saw for 10 seconds, rather.
Yep, so go ahead.
We'll give you a couple more seconds and then we'll show it to you so you can have a chance to reflect on how you did. Okay, let's do it.
Yay.
Oh, so some of these symbols are easier than others, right? Because you can automatically repeat in your head and take a picture of some of these symbols, but the order and the sequence I find is super challenging. I'll mix them up. We'd love to hear from you too. Please provide feedback if you have any to offer. Okay, let's do one more just to give them the true feel. Okay, let's do it.
One more.
Okay.
Go.
There we go. 10 seconds. That was intentional to confuse you. Okay, 10 seconds. All right. Going back.
Okay.
One more. Okay. Now you can't see anything.
Go ahead and write those down in order. The symbols that you saw. Also, as we're doing this, there's lots of distractions, as Jess said. So this mimics real life when you're trying to recall things and people are talking like me right now. Or there are people walking around your desk, asking questions. So lots of distractions may come up when you're trying to access your working memory.
That's a great point. Yeah, we definitely create those distractions, those layers of distraction intentionally throughout the simulation so we can throw you off track. Okay, let's look at it. Ta-da!
All right.
I wonder how they did. Yeah. And just so you know, we do each of these, and then at the very end, we'll bring out the sheet and you have a chance to reflect on it during the discussion. So technically these layer up before you have a chance to decompress and reflect in order to really simulate the tension and anxiety that our learners feel while trying to activate their working memory. Awesome. Thanks, Sheila. That was fun.
Yeah.
Fun for me, at least.
Yeah, because we didn't have to do it.
Okay, let's do it. So the next one is station 4, and I'll go ahead and take this one. I absolutely love facilitating this station. It requires a lot of energy, that's for sure. So essentially, this one simulates what it feels like to really manage your time, plan and prioritize the layers upon layers of priorities that you have throughout your day. It really simulates what a learner feels like to have to estimate how much time a task will take. And then we allow the participants to do just the same, and also to really be given a list of priorities that they need to go through their calendar and organize. And I should tell you that this really lasts about 5 minutes. So we give the activity, we have a chance, and we'll give you a chance to preview it, but really it's quite rushed overall, which is part of the experience. So let's do it. We're going to try a few of these. I mean, I don't have time for all of them, but I want you, the audience, to look at this list of 6 activities and see if you can estimate how long each one would take you to execute. And then we'll go ahead and just pick 2 or 3, and you can actually time yourself doing them and see what the difference is. So first and foremost, I'll give you about a minute to go through and estimate how much time these things take, and then we'll go ahead and execute upon them. Again, with many distractions. Waving hands, talking voices. Yes, we appreciate the distractions. I should do the same thing, Sheila. Maybe we should do the jumping jacks together. Okay, so let's see what we have. So we have 15 jumping jacks. Write yay 25 times. Stand up and sit back down 10 times. Get some exercise in here. Recite the alphabet twice. For further complexity, you can recite it backwards. Draw a self-portrait and count to 100 once. Each station has about 5 to 8 participants. So it's really fun and exciting to see the execution portion because it gives them an opportunity to really test their estimation skills, but also it adds some good enthusiasm to the room. as you see people doing jumping jacks throughout the simulation. So let's go ahead and just try a few of those. Let's say stand up and sit back down 10 times and then draw a self-portrait. And then we'll come back in a minute and see how long each of those took you. Maybe I should actually stand up. I'm dying to see how many of you for a self-portrait did a stick figure.
I know I would.
Me too. And that's the majority. The participants certainly do. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And it usually meets their estimation because of it. It's all relative, right?
Yep.
All right. So I know you don't have time to share. Feel free to drop some feedback into the chat or let us know after, but we're so curious to hear how your estimations turned out and how the execution, the differential, all of that ended up. So we would love to hear from you. Let us know if it worked out or if you were off on what have you. Okay, so Sheila, so we gave a preview, we gave an overview. I'm curious your take as an expert in the field as to why simulations are so effective.
Yeah, I think that these simulations are effective for a number of reasons. I think the first and foremost, when I've done these for parents, the amount of empathy that they develop for their own learners that they've been frustrated with. So they have had these kids, and under their wing, and they're just like, why aren't they getting it? Or why did they do this? They're being defiant, they're lazy, all of these things. And I believe that the simulation helps with empathy to say, oh my heavens, it's not that they're lazy or tormenting me because I'm their parent. It's because they don't have this skill set yet. So I think that's really powerful. It also, I believe that the simulation gives you some perspective and reflection on your own areas of growth opportunities. I know it definitely has done that for me. Your children are often mirrors of you, and when you realize that in situations like this, it really does give you another way to look through the eyes to your children.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I really think that that's helpful. And as an educator, sometimes you think students are being defiant, and in reality, it's just that they need support in certain areas. And having a simulation that can call out their areas of growth also gives you the opportunity to build tools in your own educational toolbox to support the learners instead of being just exasperated, which oftentimes as educators we felt just exasperated. It really helps you to gain the tools that you need to pinpoint their needs to be able to support them.
Yes, then put them on that positive path to potential so you can expedite their growth, but also their feelings of success and confidence. And it's extremely helpful for learners to feel seen and heard in this experience.
Absolutely.
And so teachers and parents alike are able to then take some of those strategies that we provide and implement them immediately so that learners can feel like they are part of the community and are understood.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So we have received a ton of positive feedback. We have hosted these for both parents and educational communities. We even were featured, had a press release that really highlighted some of the takeaways and the feedback. You can see some quotes here from both a parent and a teacher. And we have a great time helping facilitate these simulations because the feedback and just even being part of the experience is fantastic and phenomenal each and every time. It's extremely moving, and it can absolutely then move the needle in your classroom and your school community, as well as your household as a whole. So simulations we have found extremely effective through the feedback we've received as well.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about the ins and outs, the details. So as I mentioned, the simulation, it can start off as a 90-minute experience. You can extend that based on the overview and the discussion. We've also done this as a stepping stone, kind of the beginning of an in-service week, where we really did a deep dive into executive functioning as a workshop for a school. So you can really swing this in many different ways to meet your needs. We sell the kit in isolation. And so the kit is $4.99. And what comes with that is an extensive, comprehensive user manual, materials for each and every one of the stations, and a facilitator's guide for each station. So we also have the ability to train you in advance so you feel fully equipped to really lead the simulation, provide the overview, facilitate the discussion, and use that kit over and over again, as many times as you feel is needed. We find it highly valuable for you to be able to use it once a school year, or for both educators in your community and the caregivers. However you think it really meets your needs and is best used, you have the kit, it's yours to own, and you have all the materials to be able to facilitate it just about any time you need. We also are able to facilitate it directly, where we can come to your campus, to your community organization meeting, wherever it's needed, and make sure that we provide the overview. We facilitate and help facilitate those circuits, and then also provide the debrief discussion thereafter. So you'll get the kit, you'll get to keep the kit, and then we provide a little consulting throughout the actual experience. So again, you can use that kit anytime after, and then you'll have kind of the training live to see us and observe us facilitate and do those intros and conclusions. And then we can do combination. So Sheila has been an extremely helpful resource where she's able to go online and do the introduction, the training, the discussion thereafter online remotely. And I know that that's really key for certain areas that are not currently allowing anyone outside the community on campus or in the building, if you will. And so this is a perfect opportunity for you to blend the two models of self-led and direct facilitated. Again, the kit is all yours, so it's yours to keep. The added cost is just facilitation, the time we spend providing the intro and facilitating the discussion thereafter. Anything you'd like to add here, Sheila, about your experience as a facilitator?
No, I think that it's the discussion after is just so powerful and priceless, because I think that having dialogue with participants, a whole group, has just been one of the things I believe that really helps to let everyone know we're all in this together. And I think that's
absolutely. Great point. And also part of the discussion is, like we said, providing strategies and knowing that we're always there afterwards as a resource for your community, for your learners, for your caregivers, because without that, I think it's really hard to go through this experience again without the debrief and discussion, but also without some strategies. You're left empty-handed. You finally feel like you get it, but then you're not able to execute and strengthen some of these underlying skills. So part of that discussion comes with tips and tricks that I feel are so beneficial and highly effective.
Absolutely.
Great point. So let's do first, before we go on further, let me talk through the process, Learnfully process. And then if we have time for questions, it looks like we're running low on time, but we will definitely circle back to those questions. So Learnfully, like I said, is a personalized platform of educational specialists. We start with a caregiver questionnaire to make sure you know exactly, or we know exactly what you see through your perspective and your lens. We can conduct file reviews, make sure that we're looking at all the ins and outs of your learner in order to match them to an educational specialist who has the credentialing, the certification, and the personality to really engage the learner and expedite progress. Thereafter, we do a meet and greet to ensure that they have the chance to establish a connection and rapport. And then if all goes well, we initiate instruction using our consultation and learning plan. Within that first month of instruction or prior to, we also administer a screening, which involves nationally normed measures and a couple different aptitude measures based on the needs of the learner. So we can really delineate and streamline what those big picture long-term goals are, but also those short-term goals to ensure that we have proactive communication and that we're tracking and communicating progress over time. Oh, there's the Q&A. So it looks like we might have time for one. Let's just do one, because I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Sheila. We got a question about, first question was who benefits from the simulation? Who do you
Mm.
find benefits from the simulation?
Wow. I think that there's no one that doesn't benefit from from the simulation. Um, I believe that caregivers and teachers will benefit two ways. They'll benefit because it's very reflective upon how we operate. One of the one of the facilitations in person that I did, I purposely didn't put the tables in order, and so when you were at table 3, you had to go find table 4, and people were searching, and some
Mm-hmm.
people took it in stride. Some people were like, I can't find the table. So it was really interesting. So there's kind of like these little mini lessons within the bigger lesson that people, really lets you look at, like, how flexible are you? How adaptable are you to things like chaos? Are
Mm-hmm.
you able to focus? And so I think that that's really helpful because it, again, I go back to the word empathy. It really helps you understand when your learner is sitting down and the trash man's going by and you're asking them to do homework and the dog is barking and the toddler's running around and you're like, why aren't you focused on your homework?
So
Lots
true.
of things. So it
You
just
just
really
described my life.
so it really is something that helps you. I mean, the number of light bulbs that go on in the adult's mind as these simulations are happening, or as is important in their own reflection as it is to the reflection of how their learner is trying to interpret their own learning.
Yeah.
So learners obviously will benefit from this because we as the supporters of their educational journey, whether it be life journey or math and science journey, whatever it might be, we're coming at it from a different perspective at this point because we're really
Mm-hmm.
looking at this holistic view of it's not just what information I want to put into this little being, it's how is that little being able to take in information and what other supports do I need to build up to ensure that information goes into this person, because it's not all about I have the answer to how to read a book and I'm going to give that to you. It doesn't work like that. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
pieces of executive functioning that go into learning how to read. But if they aren't incorporating these executive functions into their lives, they aren't going to have a successful journey to reading. And then they're going to hate
Mm-hmm.
reading.
Oh,
So,
it's so true. Again, the
it's,
preface too, right? I'm so thankful that you highlighted learners too, because I think we focus, as we should, a lot on caregivers and educators. But I also think one population that could benefit from this is classroom communities, because again, it allows the learner who is feeling this way to feel like others can relate or understand them better. And then they can
mhm,
seek out the support without feeling like they're the only or they're not part of the classroom community. So that's a great point. I
exactly.
really appreciate you mentioning that. Let's do one more if we, I'm sure we can make this. Okay. So what age specific symptoms are simulated in the EF challenge? Is this appropriate, let's say, for which range of grades if we're looking at hosting at a certain school or community?
Yeah, currently for elementary, middle, high school
Mm-hmm.
is really the target for the current simulation that we have. We're working on adult learners. We're also working on the younger preschool age group.
Mm-hmm.
And so this can be adapted for any age, absolutely, because in truth, executive functioning skills are as important as math and reading and science and all of these other learning, um, skills that we want students to learn. Executive functioning is as important. And so we want to start getting kiddos as young as we can throughout their whole education. And then as an adult, it's just as important to be using this in our roles in our jobs as
Mm-hmm.
leaders, as coworkers. If we can be empathetic towards one another and understanding people's challenges, strengths, areas of growth, we can really come together to collaborate to ensure success for every age.
Absolutely. And it's so empowering, right? Like to feel like
Um,
you have kind of the secret tools to be able to really fulfill your potential as an adult as well. You finally feel like you're understood in your community. So I feel like I absolutely agree. Right now it's elementary, middle, high school, but we have the plans to build it out on either end, because executive functioning skills start to develop very, very early on, and they continue to develop as you're into adulthood. So again, they're trainable, they're moldable. There's always opportunity to improve in these, especially if you feel like, as an adult, you haven't had the chance to do so as well. So
yeah,
thank you for that, Sheila. And thank you for being
absolutely.
with us. I am so, so grateful for your experience, your expertise, and all of your support. I appreciate each of you for joining us today. Make sure that if you have any questions or they were unanswered, that you email us at the contact address. You can call or text us. You can follow us on socials. We'll make sure to share this webinar with you so that if you want to share it with others who might be interested, you'll have more freedom to do so. So thank you again for joining us here at
Thanks,
Learnfully.
Jess.
Absolutely. We hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.